technical term. But now invite the speakers to come to the panel so that we can have a discussion and a question round. Who's first? Good afternoon. All this process, which is so very complex, which is definitely a craft and a trade, but really, really marginal in the spinning process, causes us to think this will soon vanish, this will soon disappear. Any signs to think otherwise in the future so that the silk industry can be sustained and preserved? As far as I know, this would be a difficult job. So what is your opinion about silk production? How can it be preserved? Because it is a beautiful process indeed. Thank you. Unfortunately, the future is dull, very gloomy, as happens with many crafts, old and traditional crafts. You know, today is a matter of time. Time matters so much. You know, everything has an hourly rate. Today, you know, you pay by the hour. So obviously these workers cannot make a living out of it. To some extent, the activity could be preserved in museums, as we mentioned, as activities that can be seen, that can be exhibited and displayed as a show, an exhibition of a really old-fashioned trade. But how long will that last? We don't know. Hello. I am a retired teacher. I've been a teacher for 50 years. And yes, I am retired, but I am very active. For the past 35 years, I was a teacher in continuous education, in adult education. So, well, I've also been a primary and secondary teacher, but particularly with adults, their interest and their willingness to learn. You know, if an adult going to an adult school definitely goes to school because they want to learn, unlike children, they are forced. So, a few years ago, to set up a group called the Culture Open Group, the classroom, with the aim, with what we saw around us, and including museums, of course. So we would prepare outings to museums, visits to exhibitions, and then do the actual visit. Along that process, I personally discovered or found out that Valencia was going to join the Silk Road City Group. And I became very, very interested. And so we did our own Silk Road and Silk Road visit in Valencia. Route during our visit to Uzbekistan, always with the Silk Road as a motto. What did I like most about the project I read when Valencia first the Silk Road program by UNESCO? The many cultural prospects, but also the very interesting intercultural possibilities. I was really struck by that. Well, education will not change the world, but without education, you will definitely not change the world. The importance of education, the need to is a very important way of working on peace, on building peace. So that's the way it all began in my group. And nowadays, thanks to the new technologies, well, I am a retired person. My students are in different locations, but using, texts on our mobile phones, we exchange information, we program our trips, and now we call ourselves the traveling cultural. The importance of museums from this particular point of view as a way to take people closer to culture. I did not know there was an educational group in university working on learning methodologies for museums. You also talked about museum educators. I take it a museum educator is the person who explains the activities in a museum, who guide visitors around the museum, who organize activities to invite people. Talk about educators in their class work on a project-based methodology and do projects like ours, the Silk Road project. We are starting with Valencia. Valencia has a spectacular museum. We've been to it a few times. We pay attention to different aspects of it. And we've also really familiar, but no, we still have the last yarns, who spins yarn for silk velvet. So there you go. The person in Valencia, he is the only person who can spin from silk, basically. So yeah, I'm about to finish, sorry. But anyway, yes, the audiovisual materials, I think it's a great idea, really good idea. Educational purposes. It'd be interesting to have a video or a recording about the spinning of silk velvet yarn before it eventually disappears. That's it. Thank you. Yes, thank you for your question, but we are running short of time. Hello. My question is to Professor Senis. My mom comes from Murcia. Her family was a farming family, a silk farming family. They would breed silkworm and do silk farming. She comes from Santa Cruz, where the Silk Palace was. What was the function? What was the role of the palace? And I would like to know more about biomaterials. Are they still testing materials, or are they already applied? As for the Silk Palace was used for water immersion of the silkworm. Silkworms from the area were washed off there, so that the butterfly would die. There were other premises, the Silk Palace you mentioned, which is now a restaurant. It was converted into a restaurant. As for biomaterials, if you have a look on the internet, you will have a lot of information. You will find a lot of data, and there are companies already who produce biomaterials. In the United States, there are a couple. In Italy, there are 3 biomaterial manufacturers. There are trials underway. This technology is young, so it takes some time for it to develop, but there is a lot of information, and results so far seem to be very positive. Applying the findings on humans, that will take time, but we'll get there eventually. Regarding the economic dimension of silk, the repercussions and impact, well, if applied to biomaterials, without a doubt, it creates value. And it does not require huge volumes of silk. It requires, however, top quality silk and sophisticated technology, but not huge volumes. Whichever the case, it is a good source for revenue for small technological companies. Hola, estoy encantado de estar aquí. Muchas gracias por estas presentaciones tan interesantes. Soy Claes Nyberg de Estocolmo, de la Universidad de Estocolmo, y yo trabajo en la fundación del Museo Andergam. Soy historiadora, además de los textiles, de los tejidos, y dirijo un centro de moda en la Universidad de Estocolmo, más centrado en la transición contemporánea y en la perspectiva histórica, pero también en relación con el legado histórico, el patrimonio histórico de Gran Canaria, por ejemplo, y también, como digo, estudiamos las transiciones más modernas en el paso a la industria de la moda. Me interesan mucho las asociaciones que pueden surgir de sus presentaciones. En un primer lugar, para obtener conocimientos de todos los museos de la seda de todo el mundo. La industria de la seda es una de las primeras industrias globales del mundo que nos han proporcionado, bueno, vestimenta, prendas de vestir. Dentro de esa reorganización global de la industria textil, es increíble. Bueno, el sistema de libre comercio instaurado a partir del siglo XVII, del siglo XVIII, la producción de tejidos a partir de ese momento se duplicó ya en los 90. Lo que es interesante aquí es el paso al nuevo siglo, y me gustaría que comentasen esto, el declive de la fibra natural, no solo a nivel de comercio de la seda, sino a nivel más general. El algodón también ha sufrido un declive muy importante a partir de los periodos bélicos de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, así como otros tejidos naturales. Hoy en día vemos, como ha dicho usted, un declive de la seda. Hemos visto, bueno, otros aspectos relacionados con la celulosa. En Suecia tenemos producción más o menos asegurada gracias a las explotaciones forestales. No me gustaría ser pesimista a largo plazo, porque podemos hablar de la reutilización de los materiales naturales, de las fibras naturales, lo que hace que los investigadores hablen de nuevas posibilidades, de nuevas opciones muy ventajosas. Y yo creo que la seda puede desempeñar un papel importante dado el carácter globalizado como mediador en estos nuevos conocimientos para llegar también a públicos más amplios. Yo creo que esto es compatible y muy adecuado para este simposio o congreso. Gracias. Tengo una pregunta. Oh, I have a very specific question about the twisting of the fiber in La Palma or on La Palma Island. You showed us in the video the very different usages, of the yarn. So I would like to know, is that a reconstruction based on illustrations, or was there really a continuous yarn? Because you could see it in the other way. Basically, the yarn coming from the spinning wheels, at least in China, with 2,000-year-old pictures, that was the way the fibers were twisted. But with the yarn coming from the reels, that's actually what my question is about. Yes, it's very, very interesting. But the main interest lies in the way silk was worked on La Palma. No evolution whatsoever. The only new thing is the combs on the looms. The looms are now industrial. I saw the actual wooden combs some time ago, and that was the only system they knew. Now the combs are metal. But yes, I know in China and other countries, they spin the fiber directly and reel it around the spindle or the spinning wheel. And then they twist it, you see. But here, as you said, it's all continuous. First they reel it, and then they take 3 fibers and they twist them. You saw 4 on the video, but sometimes they can handle 6, 8, and they twist them and then they go over and over again. It's really amazing.
I just wanted to say that it's been very interesting for us to see and to listen to these 3 presentations this morning, and commenting on what our Swedish colleague mentioned. The first presentation, we could see everything that it is being done in the different silk museums in the world, the methodologies, and we have seen how in La Palma they work traditionally, and there's this museum there as well, and we know about that tradition and Llano de Jacquard since the 18th century, when they created new technologies. To talk about industry is talking us about the craftsmanship of this process. And I would like to end saying, as our colleague from Murcia, the future is open for us. Every natural fiber suffers the competence of artificial fibers, petroleum, chemical products, and everything that makes us wear today artificial garments. But we are now facing a time in which people are beginning to wonder about this. What cannot be copied is nature. Nature produces things, and silk is included among them, that cannot be copied. And silk is beautiful and it cannot be copied. And specifically, as you know, as in Murcia, that they were telling us that we can be healed by nature. So our horizon is open. We should not look back, but the world has changed, and silk is part of it. Silk has a past, silk has a present, and silk will have a future. Thank you very much for these 3 presentations. Thank you, and I would like just to add regarding your comment and the comment from the colleague from Stockholm, that one of the main qualities of be renewed is a material that has 500 years of history. The future of this material, when we thought that silk was dyed, then we discovered that there are new options in medicine, but it can be used also in electronics. They can be used for sensors, but sensors and devices and optical devices as well. There's always new uses for silk. It seems that we know all about silk, but there are always new discoveries, and this is amazing and fascinating. Well, I think that we are going to close this interesting session, but before closing, I would like to say thank you again to the 3 speakers for their presentations, which had the right balance, because we have been able to see very different areas. Thank you as well to you, to the audience, and of course to the interpreters who are helping us to understand each other. Thank you very much.